And let me hit record. Okay.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Creative Nectar podcast. It's good to have you back. It's good to be back. I'm Stephanie Gray, your co-host.
And I am Jenny Hahn. Hello, everyone.
Hey, everybody. We are going today to talk about meeting uncertainty with creative expression. And that is something that we just got off of a workshop. We did a live online workshop just this past weekend. And I don't know about you, Jenny, but I felt very nourished by that. It
Hmm.
just felt the timeliness of it. It just the timing of that and the uncertainty of the world and just how much it was needed. And I felt the participants felt this, the same or similar. So yeah, we thought we would bring
Yeah.
that into the podcast and talk about that a little bit more, just in this with the state of the world the way it is and the transformations happening and the paradigm shifting. Um, how can
In real
creative
time.
in real time, you can feel it under your feet, and
Yeah.
how can we use creative expression to meet these times? So that's what we're all about
Yeah.
today. And we're going to share some stories and we're going to just get into it.
Yes. Bring it on. Let's do
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that workshop was really incredible. And I think, like you said, Steph, this is all so timely. It feels like we're just really living in unprecedented times right now. There's huge shifts happening. Myself have noticed like this roller coaster of like shifting like into fear and despair and then rising into hope and then shifting into uncertainty. I mean, it's just, I'm so grateful for years of practice that I feel like has given me kind of, but I still don't feel fully prepared. So it's just, here we are.
Here we are.
Here we
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's talk about uncertainty. What is uncertainty? I think we all know because we're living it in some form or fashion, whether on a personal level with changes, with job uncertainty, with financial instability, whatever it is that you personally might be going through, a health challenge, but then also the collective, societal shifts, political shifts, and then, climate shifts. I mean, everything just feels like it's teetering right now. And like, we're just not sure what we as humanity, which path we're going to be going and what's going to be next. So, this is where these practices can become so instrumental of bringing awareness within and then using our creative power, using these tools to ground ourselves and then to express is just can be so supportive. So let's talk about uncertainty.
Let's do.
Let's do it. I love definitions. So, uncertainty is defined as not able to be relied on, not known or definite, stirring doubt, unpredictable,
Hmm.
or in limbo. Limbo time. You remember the limbo from the skating rinks?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So, but this is what I love about. So it sounds scary maybe. It sounds hard to meet, but also uncertainty means changeability. And this is where the power comes in because we get to help shape change creatively through the use of our imagination, through innovation, through vision, through creative power, which is our jam here.
Hmm.
And there is power and choice in this. And so we are not hopeless to the whims of wherever things are moving. We are co-creators in the next reality, in the next moment, in the future. So this is why we both feel so passionate about sharing these tools of creativity, especially for those of us who feel disconnected from our creative power, from those of us who have shame or blocks or scars or anything around that, so that we can heal that, and then we can become co-creators with our experience in a more intentional way, and use creativity as a tool for that.
Absolutely. I love that. It is a choice in every moment to pick, whether you're just going to allow yourself to be moved by the wind of the day, of the moment, of the second, or are you going to take your power back, and what that looks like, and that connection between that creative being that's inside every single one of us, and the ability to cultivate change, to move with change, and to cultivate resiliency. And then from that is born so many things like you just talked about.
Yeah. And I think there's an art to this, because as you were saying that, are you going to let yourself be moved by the winds? It made me think of like the principles of Taoism, and kind of flowing like water, and this kind of non-resistance to life. And so that can also be a strength. So it's like there's this balance between those two, of where do I surrender to the flow, and where do I use my creative power to affect that flow, or to navigate it or shift the direction of the flow. So I think it's
Right.
both and.
I think you're right. I'm seeing reeds, moving in the wind. They're not breaking, they're just moving with the
Hmm.
wind. And also, for me at least, creativity always brings me back into the present moment, and brings me into my center, and brings me back home. I realize when I'm out of my quote unquote power, it's because I've left myself. I've gone somewhere else. And to call that back is just to call myself back into presence, call myself back into the moment. And creativity does that for me. And when that can happen, I mean, so much more can happen. We talk about how creativity can drop us into the heart and create more compassion for ourselves. And then that bleeds out into compassion for others. And I think when we're meeting uncertainty, we have another choice to make. It's like, can we meet that presently and grounded and in the heart? Or do we meet it completely untethered and maybe have anger or shame or anything around it, as things are bubbling up for us in this uncertainty?
Right, right. Yeah, can we get comfortable with the uncertainty? Can we learn to lean in without that resistance or that needing to armor up and fight? And maybe here I'll read one of those quotes we have from Pema Chodron that we've shared in
Yes.
the workshop, because Buddhist nun Pema Chodron, she's such an amazing teacher, especially around this topic, I think, of getting comfortable with uncertainty. And as she says, sticking with that uncertainty, getting the knack of relaxing in the midst of chaos, learning not to panic. This is the spiritual path. And as we added in here, it's also the creative path,
A
we
hundred
believe.
percent. Well, and especially with process art, right? Really doing it
Yeah,
just to do it, as opposed to creating an image that we're trying to sell or something, which is fine. But yeah.
right, right.
And it really is about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I mean, it's just so perfect, and leaning
Yeah,
into it and practicing that. And we get to practice
yes,
that every time we come to the page in a situation, for at
yes.
least for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, maybe eventually you get completely comfortable with a blank page or blank canvas, but I feel like there's always a little bit of, oh, what's going to happen? What am I going to do? Am I going to mess it up? Like what? Yeah, I think it's healthy and natural to have a little bit of uncertain, like a little bit of that tension, that creative tension stirred when we are doing something new. That keeps us present, that keeps us prepared, and it keeps us open to whatever's wanting to happen.
And and again, that's maintaining a place of being open in presence, in the present moment, not only for the discomfort, but for the magic too, because there's so much
Yeah,
magic there in the present moment that we miss it when we're just up in our heads trying to
right.
control the uncertainty.
Or if we go on to autopilot and be like, I'm going to do this because I've always done this and I'm comfortable with that,
Yes,
then it's like we miss that opportunity for that magic.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just reminded as we're talking, Jenny, of, and I'll just speak to this. I won't tell a full-blown story, but I will speak to
Yeah.
creativity was there for me in this way. This process art was there for me when I was going through some of the hardest times of my life, which was when my mother had Alzheimer's. She was living with Alzheimer's disease, and my brother and I were the only caregivers for her. And it was it was rough, and it was also magical. And I don't think, and maybe I have talked about this on here before, but it's worth repeating. I don't think, had I not had this practice that I was practicing, and at this time it wasn't as much in community but on my own, I don't
Right.
know that I would have been able to meet those moments with her and have the absolute magical moments with her as well, the joyous moments and
Mm,
the moments that I will never forget with her.
mm.
And then later, when she did get put into a home, or a living environment that where they could handle that, her decline, I have a distinct memory of going in to the big room, the activity room, and sitting down with folks. And it was a memory care unit. So they were all, having problems, but we were all like using crayons on fish, like for a fish coloring book. And there was something,
Yeah.
even though like they may not even be able to vocalize anymore, they were able to color, and we all sat around this table, and it was just this magical time to create together. So
Wow.
that is the epitome
Mm.
to me of uncertainty, because I just did not know
Mhm.
what the next day would bring or the next hour. And neither
Right.
did they, sitting at the table with memory impairment, and to be able to use the creative process to sort of come back home, however that looks, and whatever, wherever you are, like
Right.
that was just so powerful. So I did want to speak to that.
Wow. I love so much that you shared that story, Steph. And I remember hearing that a long time ago from you, and I had forgotten like the power of that moment. And it's reinforced for me even more right now because a dear friend of mine I just saw made a post earlier about the situation she's going through with her mother, who has dementia, and speaking to that same beautiful, those connective moments that are so fleeting and yet so powerful when you're there. I mean, oh, talk about learning to live in uncertainty and to flow with the changes. I mean, my
Yeah.
heart is with you and is with her. And yeah, thank you for sharing that memory. It's interesting because as we were thinking about stories, the story that I wanted to share is actually not exactly the same, but back when I was in school, back when I was in college, I had a time when one of my parents became ill, and there was so much uncertainty. I mean, this was like the stable, the rock in my life, and I didn't know how to process or how to meet it. And this is before I had discovered process art. This is before I had joined, the paint or die group with Sarah. And I remember I was preparing for my very first art show, and I ditched everything that I was working on, and I started to just collect collage materials. And particularly, I started printing images out on clear, like acetate, like transparency sheets. And I just, so it was like my desk was in chaos. And I started to assemble things. And this was very different from how I had worked before because I was doing a lot of drawing and painting. But this was like bringing things together, trying them out in different combinations, And what came from it was I ended up making these light boxes. And so I loved this idea of the layering. I went and bought sheets of like plexiglass. So it was like, looked like glass, but it was plastic. And I built these boxes and I put these layers in it. And each layer had these different images and they worked together. And then I put a light in the box. And anyway, the end result was these boxes that look like these little worlds you could peer into. They almost look like x-rays in a way, but it was all related to everything that was going on in my heart, in my being during this transit, this huge, most pivotal transitions of my life. And I couldn't explain any of it. And I didn't have a context for any of it, but it just came through. And I remember at that first art show, I had a professor write a note to me. And this is somebody who I did not study with, but from another department. And he wrote me this really heartfelt note. And he said, I just wanted to thank you. These pieces spoke to me at a level that I cannot explain, but touched me at a level that is beyond words. And it really felt important, not so much about getting positive feedback or anything like that, but it was like something was witnessed in that. I was able to show up to the absolute ungroundedness of my life. I was able to use art making in a way that was like this unspoken therapy. And then to have somebody else see it, acknowledge it, reflect it back was really powerful. And I feel like maybe that is part of the seeds that led me into this process art work, because it supported me in a way that nothing else could at that time.
Mm. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And I wonder I wonder if it's just the fact that making those, and first of all, it sounds like they were fairly intricate, like there were just it was just layer upon layer, and maybe putting that into, really moving into your heart space as you're doing it went beyond words. The actual building and constructing and creating of these light boxes. Wow. And then how interesting
Yeah,
that your professor or the a professor picked up on that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was beyond anything I had experienced yet in my studies, and that to me was like a lesson in true heart work,
Hmm.
like heart, like there's you know, art of course there's, but this was like heart work, and for me, and it really taught me the power of creative action in the midst of uncertainty. Because as we both know and have experienced, and maybe you have as well, listener, there are times where when I just cannot put words to something, the only thing I can do is pull out my sketchbook and start making marks. And it's therapeutic in a way that it is hard to put into words because there are no words needed. Or maybe it does show up as words. Maybe it's poetry, but it's not that same logical process that we oftentimes are enmeshed in. It's tapping into something deeper that can be present during this absolute chaos and unknown. There is a known to tap into.
Oof, I love that. There is a known to tap into, and I think that's really the crux of what we're talking about. There is a known to tap into, and that known is within. And when we have that or a practice in place that will allow us to tap that, even great experiences of uncertainty are possible. Like we can be resilient through these experiences, and
Yes,
we can witness and be a part of magic in the present moment too. Like it's, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, do we want to share some practices?
Yes, let's do. I thought I would share the two writing prompts that I did for the workshop. And it was interesting because I had picked one out before, like when we were planning everything. And then the morning of the workshop, I woke up with these two questions in my head.
Yeah,
So I'm like, okay, well, these writing prompts are going to be the ones that I use.
I
So
love it.
yeah, I love that when that happens. So the first writing prompt is, if my uncertainty could speak, what would it tell me? And the
Hmm.
second one is, what does my inner wisdom have to tell me?
Oh,
And I would suggest writing what you're feeling like the most juice about, like what you're most, like what has your interest. And then you may 2 days later want to write about the other one, so just
hmm.
go with your gut and move from there, and treat it like you would any other process creative endeavor, which is no editing. It's just for you and just right.
Yeah, like free form. Just
Absolutely.
let it pour out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are, I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd love to share a creative expression activity
Yeah.
that could be either paired with that or can be separate. In here we love to kind of start out with writing and then move into image making. So that can be a way to move forward. But the practice I want to share, I'm calling Root and Rise.
Mm.
And this is tied into what we were just talking about when we are in that absolute chaos, that there is something to tap into. And so I think of like the tap root. So this practice, this activity, would just require very basic art materials, maybe a sheet of paper and some markers or crayons or something. But beginning with some conscious breaths, maybe even a body scan, just noticing what you notice in the body. And then begin to draw roots. Just begin to draw roots, whatever roots look like to you, going into the ground but something about just that repetitive action of drawing roots. That's something that I often paint in paintings. And as I'm doing it, I always envision that I myself am rooting, whether it's through the soles of my feet or, if I'm sitting down, like through my root chakra, but just to ground by doing that repetitive drawing. And then once you feel settled, or once you feel more settled than when you began, then begin to draw whatever is rising from the roots. And this is where we get to use the power of our imagination or our vision to begin to see what wants to come in. And this doesn't have to be pre-planned or anything like that, but what is it that you are wanting to have happen? What is it that you are visioning into the future?
Mm.
And maybe allowing some simple image to arise from that out of the roots. So again, without judgment, without, like you're saying, Steph, no censoring, no editing, but just allow it to be childlike, allow it to be simple. But what is emerging from those roots?
That's powerful. Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm wondering if like maybe that has a place at some point in the online community. And I
Absolutely.
yeah, I so want to mention that while I'm thinking of it, because we have opened up a free tier of our online community, and we still have the paid tier through Ko-fi. But the free tier is on the Facebook group. It is still a private group, but I just feel like our community is building and it's
Yes.
active, and we have opportunities to get to know each other and to create with one another, whether that be writing or scribbling. Um, yeah, so we
Yeah.
we invite you to be part of that if you'd like to sort of explore more.
Yeah, and you can literally dip your toes in without any commitment. Like you
Mhm.
can just get a sense of what it is we do and the sense of the community. There's even some free workshop offerings in there. And then if you want to commit more and go deeper, then you can join the paid community tier.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are starting to bring in more, yeah, more workshops around this too. So we probably will be bringing in everything we've talked about today on this show as an
Yeah,
experiential, yeah, experiential offering.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
along those lines, we have decided in order to feed more energy into the creative community that we're building online, to do only one podcast a month. And I feel
Right.
like it's going to become a richer experience that way too. So we can, like you just said, tie everything together.
Yes, yes. I'm really excited about the putting these things into practice in community together because it's one thing to listen, and that's great, but also to have that support and then really begin to put it into practice is so powerful. And we invite everybody to join us with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. Well, anything else we need to mention? Let's see, we mentioned the Soul Nectar community. We will be having more themed quarterly workshops coming up. So if you did miss the meeting uncertainty workshop, live Zoom, we will be doing more of other themes too. So you can, of course, find us on our website, creativenectarstudio.com, or on the socials. Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, and definitely please do join the Soul Nectar page, the free one on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to see you there. All right.
All
Well, I guess
right.
that's it until I guess we'll meet in September, if not before on the Facebook group or in Kofi
Yes.
somehow.
Yes.
So yeah, we will we'll we will end now.
Everyone be well.
Thank you, everyone.
Until next time. Bye bye.